All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode. Um, Today we have on Andrew. He's the CEO and founder of Recall. If you are an AI person, this episode is definitely for you. So Andrew has built, along with his team, um, probably the best way I think I've heard, at least, in terms of how do you actually verify that these AI agents that are being created left and right are actually worth their salt. So they've kind of created a reputation system built around competition, where agents can come and kind of duke it out on various tasks. Talk about trading a lot. Obviously, that's been one of the big use cases that everybody's really excited about. So we touch on that. We touch on like the greater implications of AI moving out into the future, and maybe the role that Recall is going to be playing, long term in that future. It was a great episode. I learned a lot. Hopefully, you guys learned a lot as well. And obviously, if you did, please hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care, guys. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Proof of Vision. It is a beautiful Wednesday afternoon where I'm at. So no better time to be sitting in a room recording a podcast, of course. Really excited to bring this one to you today. We've got Andrew. Andrew is the founder of Recall. We're going to talk about Recall in a minute, but Andrew, how are you, sir? Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing great. Can't complain. Yeah, so I always like to kick things off. Tell the listeners a little bit about your background. What were you doing before crypto and AI kind of like sucked you into the rabbit hole?
Yeah,
Tell us a bit about your background and how you got into the space.
sure. I actually did. I did my PhD in biology. I was really focused on large data pipelines, machine learning. I applied that, studying viruses initially, and then studying global biodiversity trends. But yeah, it just really got me interested in kind of the domain of large scale data and trying to learn from it. That moved me into my first startup. So I was like one of the early employees at a mapping company. But what was really interesting to me there is we were trying to basically provide visualization and data science tools for people that had large geospatial data sets. We did that all as like SaaS in the browser, all of that. When I left there, I really just wanted to start my own project. And really interestingly, in the mid-teens, the first idea for a startup, which we went out to market with and got some really good feedback on, was actually doing machine learning on device. So pre LLMs, trying to do really sophisticated personalization on device, with the thesis that if we could put it on the device, we would improve people's ownership and transparency and privacy around some of that high quality data, instead of having to leak it off to centralized services that then split it up, sell it in all sorts of different ways. What we found is that like the market wasn't really ready for that kind of thing, but what's really interesting is then you fast forward 8 or 9 years, and that's what Apple now does with their models. They've really kind of pioneered that idea of you can do the model on device and only push it to the server when you give it permission to, or when the jobs are kind of too big for the mobile devices to be doing. I wouldn't say they've had amazing success in the LLM arena doing it that way, but they are kind of spearheading that. Now mobile devices are high quality, the algorithms are really good, the models are really good, so you can do a lot of that. But then from there, I got into crypto, really just following that path, looking at crypto as a really cool way to harness user ecosystems to be, to be part of the solution, actually owning technology, owning the data that's produced and the IP that's produced on networks, and making it more collaborative and transparent. And that got me really excited. So in the late teens, was very interested in things like IPFS and some of the early ICOs that were emerging, and I've just been exploring that ever since.
Gotcha. Yeah, so it's almost like well, I guess your background, right? Kind of gave you a good baseline to kind of jump off with Recall, it sounds like. So let's talk about Recall then. I always like to ask first and foremost, like what problem do you guys think you're solving, right? What service do you think you're providing to the industry or to the future industry that you think is filled by recall? Well, let's talk about that a
Yeah.
little.
Yeah, there's kind of two sides to that coin. There's the immediate and then there's the long term. And in the immediate, we currently have this proliferation of AI. There's no question that since GPT 3.5 came out, nobody has been able to protect and hold that fire. We saw that with DeepSeek launching and the proliferation of open source models. Now you see LLMs being highly competitive across a range of different skills. And it isn't like GPT 3.5 created an edge that just consistently dunks on everybody else. And we actually just ran a really big project to create leaderboards across a number of different skills to find out how GPT-5, their latest model, actually held up to the progress and being able to do that, being able to dunk on existing models. And they weren't able to across all the skills. And so we see both the proliferation of models, we see generalization. So some large models just getting really good at generalizing across a number of things. And then we see specialization, a number of models that are getting very, very good at specific capabilities. And most people don't use models, right? We don't use just the essentially the database and to get a query. We use software wrapped around it, and we call those agents. So there are the prompting and the chat interface agents, and then there's a huge spectrum of agents that are creating all this AI software. So how do we know which ones are good and which ones to trust? A year ago, we turned to benchmarks, mostly kind of academic endeavors to create what is the hardest set of questions that test the edges of what are these capable of. But what we've seen is that when you create benchmarks, models get trained against benchmarks. And so now we're back in this state where we don't really know what AI is very good at until we just hear from our network of humans. What are other people saying it's good at? What are people doing in the real world to test it? And that's really exciting for us. We see a microcosm of that happening in crypto. We see trading agents being particularly opaque. It's hard to tell which trading agents are good, which teams are kind of approaching it like putting hedge funds on chain, and which ones are just taking big swings at the bat and maybe good or bad. And so in the immediate term, our project is really trying to sort that out. How can we start to measure and quantify the capabilities of AI across the internet, across all sorts of skills? Obviously, we're still a team that has to have focus. So we focus on just a few right now, but the goal is to really be able to measure AI capabilities across the internet. Once we have that and we can start to create verifiable trust and ways to measure these things that are beyond static benchmarks, the long-term goal is to use those human connections, the humans, to actually steer the AI through the same way that you might benchmark or evaluate an AI. We can start to harness the human power to steer AI. Steer AI to solve new problems, or steer AI to do things the right way. And right for your community might be different than what's right for my community. So there needs to be a lot of nuance to that. And it's very hard, in my mind, it's going to be very hard for a single player, a single large lab, to create all the models that solve all the needs or create all the sort of rails to guide their model to solve all the problems of humanity. So we really need open networks where humans can come in and participate in that steering and guiding of AI's future. And we're trying to set up all of the different primitives to get us there.
Gotcha. No, it makes sense. So definitely understand, the need, I guess that you guys saw in the market to build something like this, because you're absolutely right. Like, I could go, I can go on the timeline or whatever you want to call it today, and I could find however many AI agents, on, virtuals that have launched, on other, platforms that have launched. And probably 99.9% of them are just pure vaporware. But obviously there's a lot of hysteria about it. Everybody wants to get rich quick and bet on these things and monetize them. But I don't think anybody's really thought in the even in like the later stages of like short term or medium term, whatever you want to call it, on how do you actually like create a sustainable environment for people to interact with these agents long term. So I think what you guys are building makes perfect sense. Now, from an execution standpoint, let's talk about how you guys go about that, right? I think you've come out with something called Agent Rank, which is kind of like this reputation system. Take us into the weeds a little bit. Like, how are you guys actually thinking about ranking these agents, and like what are some of the tools you use to kind of get like these snapshots of performance, on the
Yeah.
agents?
Yeah, there's a host of different ways that that the ecosystem has sort of found to measure performance. And so one I already mentioned, kind of benchmarking, setting up a set of evals or tests that measure the quality of outputs of agents. Um, another and the way those work right now is they're actually pretty like costly to create. They take generally a lot of effort to create the next benchmark because of that fact that you need to kind of you have to re-release it every time a new model comes out, because there's always that leakage that the model will just have been trained against the answers, for the same reason the SAT changes every year. And so that's a very costly thing, and we think that we can do that in a way where humans are actually creating those benchmarks and moving the tests, moving the evals closer and closer to real time with the agent. And that's what I mean about kind of closing that connection between the humans and what they want the models and agents to be performing on. So that's one category, and we actually just released our first version of that, and you can go to our leaderboards and see like 50 plus models around the world, all ranked on a number of different skills that our community were interested in. The second category of that are head-to-head performance, and so some types of work that an agent would do, you can actually just have all the agents do it in different case studies, essentially, and measure their output and see which ones are the best. How you measure the best might be, subjective, or it might be like a concrete answer. So what we have right now are the agent arenas, and we're running competitions where the answer is concrete at the end. And so those are trading competitions. Any trading agent can connect to our network. They can begin to perform trades on our weekly competitions. And at the end of the competition, we just measure their portfolio value and determine where they ranked against the agents they competed against. And those ranks carry over competition to competition. So you're really trying to track long-term consistency and performance, not the one that jumps into a competition, takes a big swing on a meme coin, and happens to dominate P&L that week, because they won't be able to do that week over week unless they have some incredible alpha where they can, and we'd love to know that. And then there's another kind, which are kind of the human review, and a really good model for that is LM Arena, if you've ever played with it. And so that tool right now really focuses on the chat interfaces, and all it does is it asks their community to head-to-head battle two responses and determine which one is the best. And so there's a whole piece of work that we can do there to make humans part of that loop and actually be rewarded for creating that data for the model creators and agent creators as well. So I see it as at least three different categories of measurement and ranking. Now, how do you unify the ranks? In our vision, this looks a lot like chess rankings. In fact, we use a descendant of ELO. If you've played chess, you're probably familiar with ELO. It's a way to rank any two chess players on a global leaderboard, no matter which tournament or which match they play in. It's about that head-to-head match of two against each other. It looks at the expected win rate of each, and then whoever won, their score goes up or down based on how unexpected or expected it was. So if I'm far worse at chess than you are and you beat me, your score only goes up a little. You were expected to beat me. But if I beat you, my score might go up quite a bit because it was an unexpected result. And so that lets the scores normalize very quickly around what you really are, but you can keep playing chess and move those scores. We do the same thing. Those scores are non-transferable. Like your score, just like in chess has different time ratings. So you might play like a chess where you only have 3 minutes for the entire game, and your global score on that is different than your score for classical chess, where you might play a game over an entire day. It's a different skill set, and different chess players rank differently. And so for the same reason, we have rankings that are for, the weekly P&L of an agent, which is very different than, creating document summaries. They're not going to be transferable, but the scores you can look at the same.
This episode is brought to you by Pendle. Pendle is a leading protocol in the DeFi yield sector, operating as a permissionless yield trading protocol, facilitating the tokenization and splitting of any yield-bearing assets in DeFi. This allows users to speculate on future yield or earn a fixed rate on their assets. Learn more at pendle.finance. Gotcha. Very interesting. My mind immediately jumps to scaling both sides of this system, right? Where on one side, you guys want to attract these AI agents to come and compete, and kind of perform these tests to get their ranking. On the other side of things, you want obviously the community and users to kind of have a say in building these things out and presenting their ideas. And then in the middle, you've got recall, right? And it's always a game of like incentives, no matter what the protocol is, or what the model is in this space, especially in early adoption. So I guess my question is, on the agent side, we'll start there. Like, how are you guys thinking about, like, from a go-to-market strategy perspective, how do you actually attract these agents or these teams that are building these agents to come to Recall to compete? What's that value prop look like? And how's the traction been? And what are some strategies there?
Yeah. So there's essentially, 3 buckets of value prop for the agent builders. So right now, getting credibility and attention. So if you're actually building a credible trading agent, you can connect to Recall and start to actually showcase that in front of a very large community of people that are watching and very interested in this. If your trading agent can make money, we can show that to people, and people are going to be very interested. And so we've seen agent builders use our competitions as a go-to-market. So they've never been seen before. They want to come and compete and get their name recognized, and we've seen that working really well. Another category that we'll be tapping into is actually when the agent is competing, we want to allow our users to interact with that agent. So actually drive business to the best agents directly through our protocol and through the curation that will happen on our protocol. So users are finding the best agents to solve problems, and we can route the people that want to get solutions to those problems to the best agents that do it, and actually let them connect directly to those agents. And so we actually want to create work for the agent builders. And then the last one is the data itself. So I mentioned the different ways that you can measure the agents. Each of those produces different kinds of data that our network can start to collect and curate and provide back to the model and agent builders. So whether that's like human preference of different kinds of responses, whether that's competitions and back-tested data during the competition period, or whether that's benchmarks and looking into how models succeeded or failed on different evals, all of that data can then be given back to the builder so they can improve their model. And that's actually very aligned with this idea of letting humans steer the model towards what they're good at, is like take the data and give it back to the builder so they can get it closer to what we want.
Gotcha. No, it makes sense. Especially on that third point, I think I think probably one of the biggest problems from an AI builder's perspective right now is how do I get good feedback on what we're trying to do here? Like, not just from the echo chamber that maybe built it, how do we actually get end user feedback, and how do we funnel that back through to us so that way we can make improvements? That's a huge value add, right? It's almost like this social network that you're building for these AI agents, and obviously for people that want to interact with them. How large is the community right now? Like how large is the audience that Recall has been able to kind of amass for these agents?
Yeah. So the main, sort of the main work that our community is starting to do is trying to curate agents. And so, like I said, we're kind of putting the different primitives in place. And so one behavior that the community is taking is during the agent competitions, they try to curate by voting and trying to rank the agents that they think are going to be the most performant. So what we're trying to do is get a sense of how good is the crowd at predicting the quality of the trading agents, and if we can find the good predictors and the ones that are actually able to sort through the background data and find the ones that are going to be um, performant again and again and again, or new entries that they think are going to be like I said before, they have a very low score because they're new and they're going to outperform. If they can identify those quickly, then suddenly our humans have the ability to give that curation signal. So the way they do that right now is through some voting interactions on the competitions. And so anybody who's listening can go in and go to app.recall.network and start basically playing this game. And I think in our last competition, we had like 350,000 people that were playing that game on the curation side of agents.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's, I mean, just speaking from like, like a crypto space perspective, it's a healthy amount of users, for sure, for, I think something that is becoming more and more mainstream, but it's very like niche right now.
Yeah.
It's a healthy amount of demand, I would say
Well,
on that side of things.
well, there's a couple really, helpful things about that project for getting user interest. Like, in the first case, it's kind of spectator sport. I was talking to somebody last week, and they were like, "It's just so fun watching these crazy agents making crazy strategies like YOLOing and crypto." And it's true. We have like a number of teams that join, and like they run the gamut on what kind of agent they're building, and some are fully back tested trading strategies, and they have a strategy that they're trying to execute all week long, and others are just YOLOing and trying to find meme coins very quickly. And so it's very fun to watch. It's kind of like March Madness for agents every week. So that's really fun. And then we've also just really leaned into the kind of the best consumer cases in crypto have always been the ones that make crypto not the marquee story and make it just the thing that facilitates the network running, and let the users just interact with the thing and play the game and see the fun and what the value is. And so, we've seen that in a number of apps, but like Polymarket is a really good example where it's definitely built on crypto rails, but that isn't what people are going there to get value from, and necessarily how they're playing it.
Right. Yeah. And you brought up Polymarket for a second. And I guess the way I want to relate this to you guys is just obviously Polymarket is, I mean, fantastic product, right? Like great product market fit. One of the, I guess, question marks or some of the criticism of Polymarket is kind of the way that the Oracle settles, on Polymarket. So like correlating to you guys, like how are you guys making sure that these rankings and this data collection is all done transparently? People have confidence in the results.
Yep.
Just take us through that architecture a little bit and how you're kind of leaning into the blockchain for these things.
Yeah. So the first competitions we've been running, really have just been trying to get exposure to those questions and trying to get exposure to how much actually are agent builders trying to game and break the system. And we've learned a lot, which is exciting. And so the first 4 or 5 rounds now of the trading competition have all been paper trading. So we don't make agents put real skin in the game. But that opens it up to a lot of agents trying to play funny games. So, for example, a couple competitions ago, we had an agent that actually launched its own meme coin and then tried to use the volume discrepancy to gain the profit that it could take through a paper trading game. But all of that is transparent to our users. And so it actually really quickly became a conversation in our community to weed that agent out and get it kicked off the leaderboard. And so that happened. And so that transparency is there. The other thing that we'll be moving towards is real trading. So having agents put real skin in the game that has, that they have wallets that you can track, and just having simple mechanisms to ensure that there aren't, transfer games happening in the wallet. But that will actually even add more transparency. So it will be fully on chain and, using it that way. There are other cases. So the head-to-head things that I was talking about, or the evals and leaderboards and benchmarks, all of those should be happening on our network, where the full log of the tests that are run on agents, what models they're happening, those will all be attested to and put on the blockchain as well.
Gotcha. No, makes sense. Makes sense. Probably my favorite part of the blockchain is the one that doesn't really get a whole lot of like, runtime. It's just like the transparency that it adds and the problems that like transparency solves many problems, especially, products that maybe were built in the traditional space that use crypto rails that lean into that transparency. It actually solves so many problems.
Sure.
So okay, so that makes sense. And then for the users, right? Let's talk about the users for a second. So like the community, the actual users of the on the other side of the competitions. Let's talk about the value there. Like what have you guys found is like the most attractive part of the reasons why a user might want to come and participate in Recall? Do they get discounted services from these agents? Like, take me down that value prop a little bit. Like, what is this so compelling for users to want to come to the other side of this?
Yeah. Well, right now, I'd say most of our users are just enjoying that game side of it, and actually, you know, getting very into the leaderboard and very very into this competition and old versus new agents and watching the actual trades that are happening. So in the near term, I think we're leaning very heavily into that kind of gamification of the experience and making that really fun, like spectator sport, and that's been working really well. But just like you said, I think access to the models that are most successful, and that if you are good at identifying great models and curating them, actually backing them and getting access to them. And so that will be a piece that we'll be exploring. So like if you are finding great trading agents, how can you use them directly? And how can you actually use them to get trading advice or to manage your wallet? And same thing for completion models. You might imagine that you could back models on any of the different networks that are hosting models now, and actually get access to tokens on that model, and not crypto tokens, but tokens of the execution. So we want them to play the game, have fun playing the game, and trying to forecast models that are going to be great in the future and backing the great ones. And then through that work, start backing the great ones again and again and getting access to the services they provide directly. So then that's the other side that we mentioned before, is that we want agent builders to be able to sell their services into our network of users very easily.
Gotcha. No, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, especially if you can kind of reach this inflection point where like you've got such a vast distribution of users that again it just kind of becomes like if you're launching an agent, like right now if you're launching an agent, what's your go to market strategy, right? Like
Yeah,
you post on Twitter and you hope that people find it funny, and you're trying to play this whole meme game to try to suck people into the agent. It's just it's just not an efficient way of like reaching users, and especially with something like AI too, where like you've got to combine that with some measure of credibility or some way to actually understand if the agent can do what it says.
yeah,
And that's why I think Recall has really found a nice product market fit, is providing that middle ground, where everybody can kind of come for those things.
yeah.
So
Well,
that's kind of go
there's
ahead.
actually there's one other thing I forgot to come back to it, because I mentioned kind of the three categories for the agent builder, right? The exposure and the distribution, actually getting people to use their tools directly by finding them. And then the last one I mentioned was the data. And I think over time, there's actually a very interesting case here for users as well. Um, like if you look at LM Arena, they're a very good comp for this part of our work. And they're like a classic Web2 product where they have a lot of humans doing the work, but all of that data goes to the model creators, and the model creators are paying LM Arena to do that, but not paying the high value users. And so if we can identify the high value curators, we call them on our network, we think we can actually push work to them as well. So can they create data for the model creators directly through different interactions on our network? And for me, that kind of touches on two really important parts of our vision. One is this: we want the humans to be able to steer AI at scale through our protocol, And then the other is really trying to make sure that the people with the best intuitions and the best insights about the models can actually be rewarded for their work.
Yeah, no, it's it's a good point, right? Because the more that this AI proliferates society and kind of ingrains itself in society, I fear that like we might just replicate kind of the same problem we already have in terms of data, right? Is
Yeah,
the data is just again housed in these centralized entities that are using it for their purposes and they're monetizing it. But again, the user's kind of just left there with with really nothing to show for it.
yeah,
So it's good that you guys have thought about that too, in ways that can happen, into the future.
yeah, yeah. And like, there's this tension there with what you're saying and what we want from AI, because like there's no doubt in my mind that to to clear a few of the coming hurdles in AI, we're going to need more data. And there's a number of sources where that's going to come from. One is going to be like this human labeling and human curation. And that's really interesting for us. And obviously, like automation and simulations and synthetic data will be getting bigger and better. But for now, the humans are going to be really important in accelerating AI to where we want it to go.
No, absolutely. I'm curious. I'm curious on like the competition side. So we talked about trading quite a bit, and I think that's the most like obvious, use case that most people kind of like rally around, right? So there's like the trading aspects of these competitions, but you might have touched on it earlier, but I'm just wondering if you can expand on maybe some ideas that you guys have had, or maybe community members have had around like competitions for different parts or different services that these AI agents are capable of. Can you touch on that at all, and maybe like some ideas for future competitions that you guys are mulling?
Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll give you like two examples on kind of different ends of the spectrum. One will be competitions that look similar to what we have agents already doing, that produce kind of that easy to watch, very interesting results. And so things around sports would be very interesting. Having agents manage or try to predict outcomes for teams. That's a very interesting category of work that is on one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum are the areas where we could be harnessing models and agents to essentially crowdsource answers in a better way than kind of one off. And so an example of that might be software engineering itself. So right now, if you have a GitHub repo, you go and connect one or two software agents, you try to set up your pipeline. There's no reason that hundreds of agents could be competing to give you the best PR for the issue that you create. And so you probably don't want that in your repo. You probably don't want every issue getting hundreds of agents PRing it for a reward, but you probably want a way to start harnessing that kind of power. And I think that there's some really interesting competitions we can create there that would harness many different coding agent builders to solve real problems in software or security or things like that. And so, kind of very different end of the spectrum. That one would be very practical use case that has people very willing to pay for better software engineering, and the other is more on the spectator sport. And I think we can close that gap across the spectrum.
Yeah, that last one you mentioned there is like huge. I mean, well, I think a lot of engineers are kind of like sweating right now about
Yeah.
the implications of AI on like coding, and things of that nature. And but like, I didn't even think about it from like the audit level. I mean,
Well,
there's massive amounts of money that go into these audits and these audit competitions and stuff like that, right? I mean, this. It's an insane amount of money,
yeah.
and being able to like reduce the cost there through something like this, I think is a massive opportunity.
Yeah. And it's a fairly solvable problem. But one of the things that we're going to face if AI continues on a trajectory is like we think there are a lot of models and agents already, but we haven't even gone through the door yet where agents are building agents,
Right.
and that's not that far away. In my experience, just with single coding agents, I think the models are fully capable of many of the things that we need. It's just the harnessing around them that's still very complicated and takes a lot of work to get the most out of. But agents building agents at scale is going to just kind of change this conversation quite a bit.
Right. Yeah, it's this is kind of a broader question, but I'm just curious because of somebody that, plays in AI a lot like yourself. Like what are some industries, or like what are some services that you think that like AI could not replace, or would be very difficult for them to replace? Like what are your thoughts on that? Because I think about this a
Mhm.
lot. I'm like, how much of what I'm doing is going to eventually be done by AI, and I better get rich before then, I guess is what I'm thinking, but like I'm curious on your thoughts. Like what do you think are some industries or like some services that like probably would not be replaced by AI, or are there any?
um, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's such a hard one to answer across all time scales.
Right, right.
Um, but yeah, I guess let me ask you back. If you did like a quick tally of your week's work, what percentage of it do you think an AI that was, say, 5 times more capable than, if we just had a single model that was 5 times more capable than whatever your model of choice is right now, what percentage of your weekly work couldn't just be handled by that?
Oh, I mean, I'd probably say maybe 25%. 25% could probably not be handled by
Yeah.
by the.
Yeah. And I bet that 25% comes down a lot to like these human interactions. Um, like nobody's going to want to watch a pod. Well, I don't want to say that. Um, th- it's going to be a while before an AI can produce a podcast that you want to see. I was saying like a while back, I was like, gosh, I have such GPT fatigue. I don't like reading content anymore the second that my GPT alarms go off, right? I just want the bullet points. And I have writing fatigue. I don't want to write long form if I think it can be written by these if it can be written by GPT, and these things are at odds right now. Um, but all those things aside, but then I started thinking, well, the last kind of bastion of human connection will be seeing a face. Like video still has a home in the world because I know I current as of recently I kind of know you are you, and you're not like an AI production of you, and people that are listening know that we are not two different AI productions of us, but maybe that will come too. Um, but yeah, I think on our team right now, the hardest things to replace will be like threading the needle on high level strategy. Like if a project has a million different directions, we have like an intuition about which data is important, which things do we know have been tried before, which things resonate with us as an organization, and then you put together the strategy for how you want to get there. Everything almost from that point down starts to become AI. And even that part, like once you're at scale, you just see it trying 100 different variants of it because it's cheap and free. So I think that like for me, the last areas where AI is not going to go away are the places right now that need like human hands. Whether that's like a plumber or a nurse who feels your wound to figure out what it is, or anything like that. But I think I have a hard time seeing many areas of knowledge work that aren't radically transformed, where it's hopefully human at the steering wheel, but just a lot more being done by AI. What was your answer to that? I'm really curious.
Man, I was going to say the same thing. It's really like human interactions, that I think will be safe for a long time, hopefully forever.
Yeah.
Hopefully, but yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like, I don't necessarily think you're going to want to get on a call with an agent, to talk about. I mean, maybe you would. I don't know. It just kind of depends on like where society like allows AI to go, I guess, almost, right?
Yeah.
Like, are they going to accept that kind of an interaction, or not, right? And I don't know. It's hard. You're right. It kind of depends on like your time horizon, I guess, to answer that question.
I mean, I think that it's very you can be like very cold in the answer to that question when it comes to work. Like, what do we think AI is going to take over in day-to-day work? Um, but the question I don't spend as much time thinking about, but I think gets a little bit more at the crux of the question is how much is it going to replace in personal relationships and how quickly? So the I I don't feel this way. I don't feel like AI is going to replace my friends. It's not going to replace my relationships. It's not going to replace my partner, things like that. But for some people in the world, it will. For some people in the world, it will be the best possible partner. And I'm just curious when we cross that threshold and how far away that is. You're already hearing news of it happening, but it seems fairly contained. I don't know, but you can see why that would happen and why for some people that might be better, you know, than all the risk of human relationships and things. And so I'm not to judge or anything. I'm just saying that's going to happen, and then yeah, all bets are off.
Absolutely, absolutely. And recall will still be here. So sorry, let's circle. Let me bring back the
Yeah.
recall actually for kind of I guess my final question before we start to wrap things up. Um, where do you see recall like really like in the I guess in the longer term game? Is it more like serving individual users, or is it more about like going out to these businesses or these enterprises and saying, "Hey, listen, here's how you can integrate AI, and guess what? We have the best stable of AI agents that are scored on these reputation metrics, and kind of providing that as more of like an agent as a service type network." Um,
Mhm.
Take me through that. Like, is that on the roadmap? Is that something you guys think about at all, or is it more about like uh,
Yeah, definitely
consumer?
think about it. I think like kind of maybe early days to make the concrete call on what our users are going to ask for the most, or like what's going to be most valuable for them as we move forward. I think that I think there's a future where we start to build models that are kind of beyond benchmarking. We'll have models that will benchmark each other and things like that. But there will be a day when that's not really the way that we are looking at this, because they're all near super intelligence, or they're all nearly perfectly capable at many of these things. Um, and when that happens, I think the question is going to become it's going to change to more like, how do we harness these things? How does a human ever have the ability to push that thing in the right direction and keep it on the rails? And right now, all of that narrative is about trusting the single organizations to do that. It's the same way that we've done it with software and privacy and everything before. We've said, okay, great, company A, go build your model, and we'll have minimum requirements on how aligned or safe or secure that thing is. But I think that there's this future where that flips and these things will become so capable that we're going to want ways of measuring and directing them that are outside of the labs. But I think in a way that complements the labs in any company building model, complements them building the model better and pushing that model better, but creates that external audit and those external strings that keep it honest and true and safe. And I actually think there's a far out future where we mandate that as humanity. And I'd want to be a protocol that humanity says this is one of the ways that you can connect an AI and keep it, accountable to humans. And so that's like a very big long-term vision, is that we're that connective tissue between what humans want and what the AIs do. I think before that, everything that you said is in play. Like there's definitely paths where the models are selling services directly to users. There are paths where users are performing work to sell data back to the model creators and everything in between.
Gotcha. No, it makes sense. Where do you see recall like monetizing this? Have you? I mean, I don't know if you guys have that turned on yet, but like, where would you take your fees, or where are you taking your fees at in terms of the business model?
Yeah, I mean, I think the basic two that I just mentioned were creating the marketplace for models, especially as models become more and more uh, distributed, specialized, generalized, all kinds of mixes in between. helping you quickly identify, or another agent quickly identify the one that it needs to solve a problem, and actually paying it to do the work. I think we can become a router for that sort of transaction. And then the other one is actually harnessing humans to create data for the model builders and allowing the model creators to actually pay those humans. And so I think that's a very open door for us.
Gotcha. No, makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. Well, this has been great, Andrew. Really appreciate your time. I learned a lot in this, 40-minute conversation. I'm sure a lot of people are going to learn the same amount as I did. So any closing thoughts, I guess, before we wrap up shop? Anything you want to touch on the roadmap coming up for Recall?
I mean, jump into app.recall.network, explore the interfaces there, and take a look at some of the agents that are trying to show their trading performance. Check out the leaderboards where we rank everything from trading agents to GPT-5 on different skills, and then look out for live trading, which will be coming up, and I think very exciting to people, as it's sort of the big league trading. Right now we're showcasing minor league trading and getting a feel for it, but the big league trading is coming right up.
Awesome. Yeah, can't wait to see that. And obviously, if you're watching or listening at home, check out the show notes. We'll direct you to the easiest places you can find Recall. Keep an eye on Alia Research as well. We will be publishing some research surrounding Recall and how you guys can maybe contextualize and kind of analyze the opportunity here, from a user standpoint. And yeah, we appreciate your time, Andrew. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode of Proof of Vision. Take care.
Thank you very much.